Welcome to SMITE, battleground of the gods, monsters, heroes, villains of lore, and anime. We got a lot of anime, and it just keeps on coming. There's plenty of fun game modes for you to try by yourself or with your friends, but some of you got a competitive itch that needs scratching. Lucky for you, we've got a competitive scene revolves around a little game mode called Conquest, and your luck continues because we have one of the best Conquest players in the business ready to teach you. The God-given talent with the devilishly good looks, professional solo laner extraordinaire, FINEOKAY. And if that's too rich for your blood, I am here to take the edge off. I'm that ice guy, not that nice guy. Frost, living proof anybody can make it to Masters.
And now that Frost and his soothing voice have introduced us to Conquest, let's get right into all the information you'll need to become a god. An important thing to note is that with this video, we're going to start with the basics of the Conquest map and get more advanced as the video goes on. Conquest is a 5v5 game mode where you're either on the Order or Chaos side of the map. There are 3 lanes and a jungle on the map, and once you spawn at the beginning of the game in what's called the Fountain, you are free to roam this map as you see fit.
As you see fit? Well, now that sounds a bit intimidating. There's so many places to go, so many places it could go wrong, it's like Skyrim all over again. Depending on the character and the role that you've chosen, there are certain parts of the map that are more suitable for you. Hunters tend to be suited for the long lane near the Goldfury. They're very weak early game, so they typically have a Guardian starting with them. After about 5 minutes, the Hunter stops being completely useless, the Guardian now goes to the mid lane. There's a lot to farm around the mid lane, you gotta help out the mid laner, who tends to be a mage. The junglers, on average an assassin, are also helping farming the jungle. And finally, off in the short lane tends to be a warrior. They can stay safe, farm up, and then come out swinging. So you can go wherever you want, and when you start playing this game, everyone does go wherever they want. If you care about being competitive, there is a certain optimal way to play. The objective of this game mode is not actually to get kills.
The objective of the game is to manipulate said map in order to ultimately kill the Titan and the enemy's base. There's no shortage of things you'll have to worry about to get to that final Titan objective, but we're first going to talk about the structures defending it. In SMITE, there's a Phoenix and 2 towers in each lane that lead to the Titan. The Phoenixes are the structures closest to the Titan, whereas the tier 2 is the one right in front of the Phoenix, and then the tier 1 is the furthest one away from the Titan, or the closest to the middle of each lane. Enemy structures can only focus or target one character at a time, but they do considerable amounts of damage and are very hard to kill, especially in the early game. The more the game progresses, the beefier your gods will get, and the easier these structures will become to take down. The structures in each lane must be killed sequentially, meaning that a tier 2 tower is untargetable until the tier 1 is destroyed, and the Phoenix is untargetable until the tier 2 is destroyed.
And that's a lot easier said than done, as there are 5 people on the other team trying to do the same thing to you and trying to stop you from getting your objective. And while you do have to get a tier 1 tower, a tier 2 tower, and a Phoenix in the same lane before the Titan is exposed, it does help your team out more if you take down as many structures as possible. Every time you take a tower, every time you take a Phoenix, the Titan gets weaker. And every time you lose a tower, every time you lose a Phoenix, the same is happening to yours. So in order to better defend and attack structures, you need items, you need levels. To get that, you need gold and experience.
Golden XP, or better known as simply farm or farming, can be gained in a variety of ways across the map. Minion waves, jungle camps, killing structures, killing jungle bosses like the Goldfury, Firegiant, or Pyromancer, and even just killing enemies. If you've played other game modes in SMITE, you may have gotten actually the wrong idea on how XP and gold work. In these modes, everyone on each team gets passive XP at a certain rate as the game progresses and a certain amount of gold per second based on which mode you're in. However, in Conquest, all your XP must be actively earned through farming. Gold must also be gained via farming, but you at least get 3 gold per second. Minion waves are the absolute backbone of farm on the Conquest map. Minions are going to be the most important thing you guys need to worry about and keep track of throughout the entire game, but especially early on in the game when you need to grind through XP for levels and gold for items. After spawning into the map, a timer will count down until the minions will begin spawning in each lane. The current countdown is exactly 1 minute. Minions spawn every 30 seconds in groups of 6 in each of the 3 lanes. That is 3 archers or ranged characters and 3 melee minions. It also takes 30 seconds for minions to reach the middle of the map. In SMITE, it is not necessary to last hit or get the killing blow on minions to ensure gold gain, but it does slightly increase that gain that you receive. You can also simply be near dying minions to get their XP and gold rewards. Generally speaking, the minion waves in the long lane or duo lane are the primary source of farm for the hunter. The minion waves in the middle lane are the primary source for, well, the mid laner, and of course the minion waves in the short lane or solo lane are the primary source of farm for the solo laner. The jungle and support roles dabble here and there in these minion killing bonanzas, but serve a more roaming role on the map, which we'll address shortly. Minion waves are an immensely important part of the Conquest map and serve as both great defensive and offensive tools. Minions will aggro and focus you when you hit an enemy god and can do considerable amounts of damage, especially in the early game. You should watch out when fighting enemy gods near them, but also use them as a safety net to play defensive early on. They will also tank structures for you so you don't take unnecessary damage. They also make it easier to kill structures when they are in range of them because they remove some of the structure's protections, making your auto attacks do more damage in return. All of the farm and potential advantages you get from minions is precisely the reason you have 3 people dedicated to simply keeping track of them in each lane, and why having the capability to clear waves is actually so important. I always recommend that when in doubt, go clear a wave. This constant wave pressure on the map is just one of the aspects of the ethereal term pressure, which is a concept that I think Frost can break down into simple terms.
As was stated, you need gold for items and experience for levels. The easiest form of farm is the minions. They're coming straight to you. There's buff camps on your side of the jungle. Get a wave, get a buff camp near you. Get a wave, get a buff camp near you. So many people fall behind simply because they cannot farm. And the other reason is they get out-pressured for their own farm. And that's why we fight. You want the opponent to be so low on health and mana that it's not safe for them to stick around. On the other hand, for you want to be nice and healthy. You want to be around as often as possible to collect that farm. Those minions keep walking until they hit other minions or other structures and die. If you're not around when they die, you're not getting gold or experience. And the enemy did, and now they have an easier time pushing you out, which means you're missing out on minions. They probably stole your buff camps and your towers taking damage. And remember, the Titan gets weaker the more structures you lose. And before I forget to mention, the minions get stronger as the game goes on. And if you lose a Phoenix, fire minions start pouring out. These are even harder to kill. It's all about the pressure, and different roles apply pressure differently. We'll talk about that when we get there.
The jungle is basically everywhere in between the lanes. There are corridors, corners, camps, and crazy looking for kills assassins everywhere you go. The jungle isn't as straightforward as the lanes and requires a constant refreshing of the meta in order to fully grasp how to interact with it. I highly recommend watching some up-to-date guides and high-level gameplay to see how to path, take buffs, rotate, and so on for the game in its current state. But here are some basic things to understand about the jungle. Number 1 is that it's the main source of farm for the jungler. Why? Well, minions are extremely important, so we have roles dedicated to taking care of them, but we need someone to clear all this other farm sitting in the jungle. The tricky part is that it's also the secondary farm for every role. Sharing and clearing certain camps in the off time between waves is encouraged and helps contribute to the overall goal, getting a lead and winning the game. There are advantageous buffs and of course big objectives like the Goldfury and Firegiant here that require team play. In SMITE, you can only carry one jungle buff on you at a time, however there are usually 4 unique buffs on the map. Because of this, each role has a buff to be gained in the jungle. Right now, the Hunter gets the purple buff because the buff gives attack speed, which makes perfect sense for auto attack based kits. The mid laner gets red because a mage is usually played there, and since red buff gives a percentage power increase, it combos really well with the very high power magical items and their scaling. Blue buff is given to the solo laner because it's kinda just right next to the lane and somewhat secluded from the rest of the map, but it also gives mana regen and CDR, which is very helpful in the 1v1 sustained battle that is solo lane. And of course speed buff for the yellow buff is given to the jungler because they play a very roaming role on the map and the extra movement speed plays a key role in that. Now it seems you're leaving someone out, the poor support. On the current map, the support really doesn't have a clear buff to take, but that could change in any patch, which is kind of the point of this video. If a buff was introduced that was near dual lane and gave a percentage health gain or even protection gain, it would be instantly given to the support role whose kits synergize perfectly with it. The point is that if you understand why the jungle works the way it works, you'll get a better foundational understanding of the map and can think for yourself more. The current timers for jungle buffs are 2 minutes, meaning after killing the camp, it takes 2 minutes to respawn, while the buff you obtain also lasts for 2 minutes. It's always crucial to stay up to date with jungle timers because they're changed every so often, and you need to know where to be at the right time. There are also always smaller, non-buff camps called harpies that are a good source of farm for the jungler, but other roles may take occasionally. Always prioritize waves over these smaller camps, however. They have a quicker respawn rate than the buff camps, but simply provide golden XP.
Before you go getting yourself killed in the jungle, Tarzan, light it up. Aside from the twists and the turns, there's a fog of war that covers the jungle, which means you can only see so far in front of you. Uncertainty and paranoia are the only things in there, my friend. It could be someone trying to gank you, or worse, trying to sell you something. But you have to go in there to secure your own farm, and if you want to take their farm, you have to go in there too. If you're going from one lane to another, you gotta cross through there. You need wards. They take away the uncertainty. They are the light in the darkness. Wards win games. They provide vision within their range. If you have proper vision on their side of the map, it lets you pressure their camps better. And remember, better pressure means better farm. Maybe you're getting out pressured. They're stealing your farm, and by the time you get there, they're gone. You're dying to ambushes. It's almost like they can see you through walls, which is highly likely because you're probably dancing on some wards and you don't even know it. Wards are invisible to the enemy team unless you have a sentry ward. Sentry wards are like other wards, except they're a little more expensive, and they let you see enemy wards within range. And now that you can see them, you can remove them with auto attacks. By doing so, you remove their vision. You make it harder for them to gain pressure on you. And each player can only place 2 wards at a time, so it's a team effort. And where you're gonna put them depends on the role specifically. But overall, at the start, you want these bad boys at the center of high traffic areas. I want you warding some jungle entrances, some jungle intersections, and even some camps. Remember, pressure and farming go hand in hand. Place a ward on their red buff, somebody's bound to go get it. Somebody's gonna show up, and if they don't, you go steal that. It's okay to be direct with your ward placement at the start. Nobody really buys sentry wards, so they're not gonna get removed. But a few minutes into the game, sentry wards start becoming the norm. That's another layer to this lovely game. Are you fighting to dominate the best ward spots? Or are you placing them in the not so obvious places? And tell me, Sherlock, where do you think they're placing theirs so we can try and remove them? And all of that ties into map awareness. This thing right here on the side of your screen, you think it's there just for your health? Because it is. That's exactly what it's there for. Make a habit of looking at your map. It's like riding a bike. It's like texting. You know what it's like when you're walking and texting. You look around the room, make sure you're not about to bump into something. You look back down to text while you walk, and then you look back up again, make sure nothing changed in your path. If there's no immediate danger, scan the map while you're clearing a wave and you're not fighting, while you're getting a buff camp, while you're returning from the fountain. Like half of your match time is spent looking at the mini-map. Look with your special eyes, and what exactly are you looking for? You're looking for information. There's farming information. You can see when the minions are spawning and they're about to meet up together. You can see when your buff camps are coming back up. Plan your route ahead. It lets you be proactive. You make the first move instead of reacting to everything. You're looking for information of enemy positions. Are they coming to get you? Are they grouping up in a specific place somewhere they could be looking to make a move? And then information on your teammates. Are they together? If you go in for a fight, is somebody gonna be there to help you? But where exactly do you find this information on the minimap? Well, the ADC, the mid laner, and the solo laner are the easiest to keep track of. They tend to be in their lanes. If you see somebody in a lane leaving, going towards your side of the map, maybe you shouldn't start a fight unless you have backup or they're back in their lane. That's why you need wards. That's why you use the VGS system to call missing. Junglers could be just about anywhere. You could look at the minimap and see where your jungler is. Jungler paths tend to mirror each other. If your jungler is doing their own speed buff, the enemy jungler is probably doing the same thing. And again, do your best to ward as best as possible. If the enemy's been missing for a bit, you look at your map, we don't have wards on the Goldfury or the Firegiant. They're probably right there. You'll hear it soon.
We've mentioned the roles and a bit of what goes into each of them, but we need to take some time to dive deeper. You all need to understand the purpose of each role, but more importantly, the reasoning and cause of the roles in the first place. Why is duo lane even a duo lane? Why am I expected to play a mage in the mid lane? What's stopping a team from just playing 5 assassins and running it down one lane the entire game? Just like in any competitive game, Smite has a meta or an optimal way to play the game. The meta is heavily influenced by the developers of the game, but they intentionally don't force you to do anything. Take Counter-Strike for example. There are plenty of guns available to use, but you go back to the AK and the M4 because, well, they just kinda work. Many parts of Smite's meta are constantly changing, like what gods are currently the best or what items are simply too good for their price. However, the constant in almost every meta has been the layout of the roles. The reason the roles exist as they do is that the developers incentivize it and then professional players optimize it. The structure that the role formula brings proves to work not just in Smite, but across MOBAs in general, time and time again. In Conquest, there are 5 roles for each of the 5 players on a team. the hunter, or the ADC as you may have heard in other games, the support, who combined with the ADC makes up the dual lane, the mid laner, the jungler, and of course the solo laner. Each role has a job on the map every time you load into the game. There are too many big objectives on the map that need consistent heavy DPS, especially from range, so we have the ADC. Hunters or auto attack based mages are usually played here because their kits mathematically allow for the most possible late game DPS at a range. The reason they go to the long lane is that they are right next to the Goldfury, which will be their first big objective to shred down. The hunter can suffer in the early game, so we need a support based character to coddle them and help them grow into the beautiful flower that they'll be later on. Therefore we have the support. Guardians and some warriors are usually played here because their crowd control and utility can help peel for their hunter and other teammates on the map. Their inherent tankiness is very useful for soaking up damage and protecting their damage dealers, while also allowing them to initiate fights. When there are 5 gods holding hands running at you at terminal velocity, we really need someone to punish them with area of effect abilities, therefore we have the middle lane. Mages are most often played here because they simply just have those big damaging area of effect abilities. And they go to the middle lane because it is a crucial part of the map where lots of traffic flows and fights occur. So their ranged magical damage shines in these skirmishes where their teammates can set up for them. We talked about it before, but someone still needs to clean up all this jungle farm sitting around and impact each lane in the jungle downtime, so we have the jungler. Assassins are most common here because of their quickness in both camp clear and movement around the map, and their early burst damage when they decide to influence a lane. And of course we need someone to push out those stupid solo lane minions, and 1v1 the other psychopath who wants to do it as well, so we have the solo laner. Warriors and Guardians are most often played here because of their early 1v1 potential, sustain, and their tankiness, making them very aggressive while being hard to kill. A perfect storm for winning a 1v1. I always recommend to play a variety of roles and a variety of gods so that you can learn the game and learn the map better, but at the end of the day you're still going to need a main role to fall back on. The easiest way for you to know which role to main is to probably just play whatever role corresponds to the class that you're best at or that you enjoy the most. However, I can give you a little bit more information to push you in the right direction. The ADC role is all about the damage numbers and hitting your auto attack skill shots. FPS fans love this role. The support role is all about being selfless and helping your teammates shine. If you like doing the grunt work out of the spotlight, then support is your home. The middle lane is all about hitting huge burst abilities and getting multi-kills. It's pretty straightforward. Jungle is the role for those who want to run the map. Junglers dictate the pace of the game, and basically with the snap of their fingers, decide who they want dead on the map. And the solo lane is all about the 1v1, and just being a tanky, hard to kill menace. If you like being in your opponent's face all the time, then solo is the role for you. Every role also builds differently, and building on the Conquest map is a lot easier than you probably think. Now the reason that I say that building is actually pretty simple is that if you know your job on the map, you just build to fulfill that job, and that's all there is to it. We've already talked about each person's job except for when it comes to the 5v5 team fights, but we'll discuss that shortly. What you do need to know is that the strength of specific items in the meta builds aren't very consistent and they're constantly being changed and reworked. Therefore, the most important things to address are the things that remain true regardless of the meta. Because the ADC needs to output DPS on everything within the map, they should be building lifesteal, power, attack speed, and penetration. The support really just needs to support their teammates, so their build should consist of helpful auras and cheap defensive options since their role lacks clear, dependable farm. The mage in mid lane needs big power options with magical penetration to burst through the defensive gods plus the defensive objectives. Junglers love their power and pen, but can get away with movement speed and utility items sprinkled throughout their builds. Solo lane builds, however, are probably the most varying because it is mostly their job to be counter building and filling in the cracks of their team's items. But the role is a frontline role at the end of the day, so build tank items that directly help you against the enemy team comp. If there's any specific god you want to learn how to build in the specific meta you're in when watching this video, I recommend watching some top level gameplay to help figure out which items the developers just so happen to make ridiculous at the time. If you want to figure out everything there is to know about building, I have a video on my channel that goes in depth about everything. I'll put a link in the description for those of you that want to learn more. Regardless, here are some guidelines to building in Conquest. Number 1 is defense outtrades damage in the early to mid game. Penetration is a ramping up process, so if you're ever in a 1v1 and you have one damage item where the opponent has one defense item, you'll likely lose. The second tip that I have is that the structures and objectives on the map do mostly physical damage. This means the more physical defense you have, the softer these things will hit. This is half of the reason we even need tanks in the first place. The third thing is, because the Conquest map is all about efficiency and manipulating the map's size, sustain is always very potent, meaning anti-heal is just as potent. If the enemy team composition has a few instances of self-healing, lifesteal, or team-wide healing, anti-heal is a must in order to win fights against them. Anyone on the map can build anti-heal, so don't just rely on your teammates to build it. The fourth guideline you should follow is about relics. Relics are a big part of building, but are still very simple to understand. Carries need CC immunity because of all the CC in SMITE, so they get purification beads. They also need damage immunity because of all the burst in SMITE, so they go Aegis amulet. Junglers are also on the squishier side, so beads is very common there, but the blink relic has been a go-to for a very long time because it allows them to make plays on the map. The support and solo have more freedom in their relics and use them to counter specific enemy team comps or to amplify friendly ones. Just keep in mind that blink is also viable in these roles for initiating and playmaking. And the last tip is that you need to know your place in the team fights and who you'll be focusing on. This tip flows right into the next topic and almost the whole reason you would play this game mode to begin with, the 5v5 team fights. The easiest way to understand team fighting is this: frontliners running at backliners. Who are the frontliners? Well, it's the solo, the jungle, and sometimes the support. Who are the backliners? Well, it's the ADC or hunter and the mid lane mage. The assassin jungler has to try to kill the carries of the enemy team, but doesn't have the tankiness to just run at them. Therefore, the solo laner initiates for them, soaks up damage, and buys time. The support kinda does the same thing, but for their carries. The carries simply hit whatever is in front of them because they have the DPS for it, but also because they're squishy and can't simply walk past the enemy frontline. If a tank fails to run at the enemy backline, the enemy carries will simply free cast, or freely output damage, and eventually hit the friendly backline. The frontline simply has to buy enough time, which is pretty easily done with tank items. This is why the double tank meta has existed in SMITE since basically day one, and likely won't change. The only monkey wrench to be thrown in is how exactly to fight around objectives like the Firegiant, Goldfury, and Pyromancer.
Those are 3 objectives that are gonna give you a big boost over the enemy team. These 3 are beefy and hit back, so you're gonna need your team's help either directly or indirectly. The first one of the 3 that you're gonna attempt is generally the Goldfury. It comes in 3 different flavors, and the first one is always gold. What's it do? Gives you gold. After that, you have a chance of spawning a red Oni Fury. After your team collects the Oni Fury, the next wave of minions that spawns in each of your lanes is going to be on steroids. The other team's gonna have to take the time to clear these out because these things can take structures, can take up to phoenixes on their own. And then the third variant is the green Primal Fury. Each time you kill the Primal Fury, you will gain permanent increased damage against jungle camps, and that will stack up to 3 times. This one can seem a little underwhelming, but keep in mind the Firegiant is a jungle camp, and so is the Pyromancer. Killing this thing will give you a speed boost out of base the next time you come out. And then there's the Firegiant buff. When you kill the Firegiant, the members on your team that are alive, they will get a buff that increases their power, their health and mana sustain, and they will do extra damage against towers and phoenixes. If the Firegiant is still alive after the 30-minute mark, or if another one spawns after 30 minutes, it is now the enhanced version. You will get even more power, more health and mana sustain, more damage against towers and phoenixes, and 75% of backdoor protections are removed. What does backdooring mean? Backdooring is when you hit a structure and there's no enemy minions underneath it. It is a lot tankier. That's why you push the minions into it. The protections are gone, you take it way faster. So you see, these 3 allow you to facilitate the end of a game. Try to keep vision of them in some way or other at all times. If you're gonna try and take them, this is why we have the roles. It hits hard, someone has to tank it. Tends to be the support. Someone's gotta do the damage to it. That tends to be the ADC. Someone has to secure it. Securing an objective is once it gets low enough, you finish it off with one ability. Those tend to be the mages that are in the mid lane, and quite often they'll use their ultimates to finish it off. And during all this, the junglers are running around looking to make sure nobody gets in to try and steal it. The solo laners are usually doing their own thing when the Goldfury fights happen, but if they do come on over, they're gonna be pushing out the enemy as well. There are big walls stopping people from getting in. Now be careful, because taking a Goldfury or a Firegiant, while it is easy as a team, it's not so easy when the enemy team's still alive. So we gather around, and if no one shows up, we take it. If someone shows up, we fight. As far as entry level goes for this game, that should just about do ya. We've been playing this game for over 6 years now, and it's information that has held consistent throughout all the seasons. Way back in my day, we didn't even have this kind of information. But the final deciding factor for your level of success in this game is going to come down to you. First things first, be cozy. Whether you're on a PC or a console, be comfortable. Number 2, play and have fun. Don't worry about wins or losses or even playing perfectly. If you're new to the game, try everything and keep a cool head, my friend. We all get heated from time to time. Find yourself getting a little too frustrated, just walk away and then come back. You'll learn better with a clear head. And the biggest thing, never think that you figured it all out. Never stop trying to improve. And we're all in this together, so when you're looking for more information, you could come to me or FINEOKAY. And if we don't know, we've got a few friends who could probably help us out. And if you have newbie friends, send them our way. Share this video. Friends don't let friends suck at video games. We do thank you for watching. We wish you the best of luck on the battlegrounds. Now get out there and become the gods you were meant to be.